Recording in progress.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the San Mateo County Harbor District Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, July 25th, to order at 3 p.m. We have a roll call. Do we need a roll call on a committee?
Sure, let's have a roll call.
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Matoush,
Here.
Commissioner Slater-Carter,
Present. That was easy.
Do we have any public
Do we-
comment
same
for
time,
items
sorry.
that are not on the agenda?
there are no public comments.
Public, and hopefully everybody can see our agenda. Item 1 and item 2, budget funding. Item 3, Lighthouse Public Affairs and NHA advisors. And that'll be capped up with an adjournment. So to get started with item 2, budget funding, perhaps our general manager would like to take over.
Thank you, Commissioner Matoush. This meeting is, or the first agenda item I asked to have placed on the agenda for an awareness of our critical, our infrastructure projects and our budget for them. We just submitted our budget and the board just approved our budget for the CIP program, and that's what's up on the screen right now. And if we stay within that budget, the annual increases over the years show down at the bottom are 3.9 million, 2.6 billion, 3 million. And then if you look out in 27 and 28, we're down to 1.6 and 1.8 million. And our CIP program is very robust, and we are working on several projects right now. Most significantly, we just finished up the Catch Joanne Restaurant and ADA restroom project, and that'll be coming to the board for acceptance in August. And that was basically $1 million bathroom out of our budget. We're working on the Surface Beach restroom project in green space, and that project's coming along very well, and we're starting to write progress checks to the contractor. Also progressing quickly is the Harbor Dredge project, which is includes the eelgrass mitigation and the placing the sand, dredging the harbor, eelgrass mitigation, and placing the sand from the dredge onto Surfers Beach to combat sea level rise and wave motion there and protect the coast. So all that, based on the budgeting, we're within budget and we have money left over. My concern is, as we look at the projects that we're working on, and I just kind of reviewed a few of them, the Catch Joanne restroom, we've already spent over $1 million on it. And I don't expect to spend any more money on that. Most of the bills are in, and we're, again, it's completed. The Surfers Beach project, we've already expended $343,000 prior to fiscal year 2023-24. And we expect to spend $200,000 this year, $800,000 next year, and then another $1 million. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading the wrong line. We're expected to 3.6 this year million for a total project price of 3.9 million. The launch ramp repair is 200,000 this year, 800,000 next year, for a total of $1 million. That includes the boat washing station and the resurfacing and replacement of the launch ramps, as well as replacement of the restroom facilities and upgrades to make it fully ADA compliant. Johnson Pier electrical upgrade, Johnson Pier, the dredge project I talked about earlier, we've already spent $435,000. We're expecting to spend $2.4 million this year and another $2.4 million next year for a total of $5.3 million. Johnson Pier electrical upgrades, This year, we're expected at $1.9 million, and that should complete the project. Oyster Point Marina, docks 1 through 6 entrance ramps. We're expecting to spend the $200,000 this year on finishing up the design engineer, and then $2.3 million next year to actually build the ramps, to get them above sea level rise and landfill, the landfill sinking. The design and engineering and permitting of the Johnson Pier project would include Johnson Pier extension and widening of the pier terminus. It also includes the replacement of docks D through H, the creation of a work dock, the replacement of the fuel dock, and also moving the sewage and the oily waste pump out stations that are free to the public over to the work dock. We've already spent $1.8 million on design and engineering and permitting before we even touched it. We're expecting another $2.7 million this year. And then beyond, we need $37 million to complete that project for a total of $41 million. So that's a total budget for 23-24 at around $11 million. And beyond, we're looking at $42 million for a total of $58 million is budget we need for the CIP program into the future. The $11,000 is within budget for this year. The working capital available this year is the $10,831,404. Working capital needed for 23 is $11,000. Working capital needed for 23-24 with moving the highlighted projects to the future is $8 million. And then remaining capital available is $2 million, is what I'm looking at to prioritize the projects. The project for Pillar Point Harbor launch ramp and repair, we applied for a grant for the design and engineering of that program through the Office of Boat and Waterway Safety, and we did receive that grant. So Office of Boat and Water Safety is going to cover the cost for design and engineer. For design and engineering for the Pillar Point launch ramp for $200,000 this year. So that we can add that money back into our budget. And then next year, the $800,000, we're expecting grant money to cover that also, which is normal. So we're taking that out of our budget also. So a total of $1 million we're putting back into the budget, which is why I say that we have enough in the budget to cover the $11,000 if we need to. But I don't want to spend down to zero in our budget. So my recommendation is to Johnson Pier electrical upgrades, finish the design and engineering this year, but not actually do the work until next year. And then the Oyster Point Marina docks 1 through 6 entrance ramps, finish the design and engineering this year, but push the repair of those ramps to another year. Or next year. The ramps only flood during king tides. So that's only happens about 6 times a year. And they're only flooded for 30 to 40 minutes during each event. So people can plan for them and avoid them if they need to. And again, it's only 6 times a year. And we give plenty of notice before the king tides hit and before any flooding takes place. And we'll continue to do that. And then the electrical upgrades, they're needed, but we can go 1 more year with generators out at the end of the pier to do that project next year. So I just wanted to make sure and emphasize where we're at with our budget, where this money is, or how much we have now, how much we plan on spending this year, how much we're going to have left, and then what we expect to have over, which is what Julie projected of increase of 3.9. At that time, at that point, after we get these projects, we're gonna have to reevaluate during the budget network, our budget process next year, but I think having a bigger reserve, we already have our mandatory reserve of about 3 million,
That's correct.
and keeping that extra 2 million on top of that 3 million as a reserve for cost overruns on the projects we have now. The bathroom and restroom and green space project is already at, I think, the 10% overage that the board allowed for me to authorize. And same thing with the paving project, they're at the 10% authorized above what was estimated to be the price. So we're already maxed out on those two projects. If anything else pops up, I'll have to come to the board for additional financing of those projects, which we've had a lot of work done at the Surfers Beach restroom and green space project, but there's a lot of work to do. And I'm expecting some change orders to come in as we complete that project. But if you've seen out there, the foundation's in, the plumbing is in, it's all ready to go. They'll soon be building the bathroom. They did their earthwork for the mound for the grassy area. They've already completed the trail. So they're moving along fast. And we'll have the additional parking there with the EV stations also. So it's not going to be completed before the end of the year, I don't think, due to some of the delays with underground work, but it will be completed in late winter, early spring, which we're looking forward to. With the dredge project, all the permits are tracking right now to be completed this fall. And we're almost in daily contact with all the permitting agencies, and they're well aware of our deadline to put it out for RFP and to be able to start working on that project in early spring, because we have to be able to begin the eelgrass season, growing season. If not, we'll be pushed another year, which working with our consultants and getting the feedback from the permitting agencies, that doesn't look likely. It's 80% to 90% confident that we'll begin in May. And we'll be able to put this out to RFP by the end of the year for that project. So we'll be spending a lot of money on the dredge project. Could be more than 2.4 this year, all depending on how fast they work. It could be the total of 5, but that would kind of why I want that buffer of the extra 2 million in our accounts in case it does do that, because we have to be able to finish that project. And we might have to put another project on hold to help us out with that. But right now, I don't know what we can stop doing right now to cover that expense if it does go over. We might have to stop the construction. Any questions on this awareness piece?
No, it's well put together.
I have a couple questions. One, next time we talk about it, could we have sort of a rough estimated guesstimate on the chronology? I'm not looking for anything precise, just, 6-month chunks or something.
Yeah, we can do that.
For planning purposes. And,
Beyond just the year.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And otherwise, I think this is very informative, and $58 million worth of work is ambitious.
I'm a little nervous. With the projects we have going now and with the funds that we have in our account. Especially with the harbor being effectively closed for over 6 months now.
Right.
So we're also losing those. It's not a huge chunk, but it's a noticeable chunk. It's a couple $100,000 here and there, which is a pretty good chunk. And that goes into almost everything we do and everything we're negotiating. We're looking at how that affects the future. We do need outside consultants were required, but I think they're required. But I say that need required differential because Julie's more than capable of doing the work with the, like the NHA advisors. But Julie doesn't have the time to do all that work with the NHA that this consultant can come in and do. And we're kind of at a time crunch if we plan to do anything with the 2024 elections.
My
So,
preference is to use consultants and advisors because it's, in the long term, we don't have retirement to pay for.
but that, I want to make sure we're closed out on the capital improvement project and some type of agreement that we're going to agree or disagree with my plan to kind of push two of those projects off.
I think if we can push them off comfortably,
Okay.
as you know, my philosophy on Oyster Point is, I think the primary, Oyster Point, as I see it, is a great place. It's a great residential and visitor serving, but it doesn't need or serve nearly the kind of public and the diverse interests that Pillar Point does.
I agree with that.
So we need to be looking at, our best economy is to serve the greatest diversity and number of people, and that would be Pillar Point.
Yeah, and we took some pretty significant cost savings over at or Oyster Point with the change in hours, eliminating the overtime. So I don't expect to be $1 million in the hole with OPM next year. We continue to look at areas of cost savings. Same thing at Pillar Point. It's just a little less, or it's a lot more difficult at Pillar Point because of all the services that we are trying to meet. And we're not meeting all of them to the level that I want, and I believe the board wants. So we're working on that.
My feeling too is that if you, given what's going on with inflation and supply chain and so on, the sooner we get the bigger projects done, the more money we'll save in the long run. Because we'll spend less as inflation takes up the bigger projects. So this is good. Thank you. And thank you, Julie. It's very nice.
And on to item 3, Lighthouse Public Affairs.
Lighthouse Public Affairs and NHA advisors. I'm looking at this from a long-term perspective, and the main purpose of the reason I'm recommending that we hire Lighthouse Public Affairs and NHA advisors is really funding, the increased funding. We need tens of millions of dollars for our projects into the future. Tens of millions of dollars aren't going to come from our budget, our current budget. So we have to find other sources of money. One of the things that's fighting against the district on locating sources of money in grants and otherwise, I believe is related to our reputation, both locally, the state level, and federally. It's been reported to federal agencies that this board is dysfunctional and doesn't spend the money in accordance with the grants. And when I was in DC, that rumor was again spread by those agencies to me. So we have that negative opinion about us. And so I feel when our grants get in front of other agencies with that negative opinion or reputation, it doesn't get very far. Over the last 4 years, this board has turned around significantly. When I go to local, like the CSDA or other conferences, I get very positive reviews. Even locally from different agencies like the MCC has given us very positive reviews. And we've accomplished a significant amount of work, both internally with our processes. We can pay online now, track our bills much closer. We've earned national awards on our budget for 3 years in a row. We've received clean audits with no recommendations for several years in a row now. I lean on Julie and give her all credit for that because she's been doing amazing work with all of that. But again, that's part of our turnaround that we've done at this district. We've completed projects that have been on hold for several years, the West Trail, the fishing pier, the harbor master's office. Now we're working on, we broke ground, or we finished the restroom at the Tenant Row. We're working on Surfers Beach restroom and green space project, and we're putting out for bid in a couple months the dredge of the harbor, which is decades in coming. All positive. And the number of people visiting the harbor last year broke all records from before for buying off the boats and for buying from the fish buyers, the fish market, going to our restaurants. And COVID really exposed the coast side to many people to come out and see all the great things that we have. And then with the improvement of our restaurants in the coming months, it'll even grow even further. So I want to sell that story, both locally and federally and at the state level. Also have, Lighthouse is also a lobbying group, and they can help us lobby for certain aspects of funding from the state level and national level. So they'll improve our reputation and help us lobby and get us in with the appropriate people who can help us. NHA Advisors is a different aspect of this, where they're coming in from the financial end and taking a look at our finances. They'll review our finances, they'll review our budget, they'll review past budgets. How did we spend our money in accordance with those budgets? And also look into the future and make some recommendations on how to meet our goals financially and different avenues we can take to meet those financial goals. We're hiring him as municipal advisors, and they do have a fiduciary responsibility to us, and when they are working for us and nobody else, and their fiduciary duty is to ensure that they're working for the betterment of the district in accordance with our master plan, our strategic plan, and discussions with the board. And I'm recommending that we bring on both Lighthouse Public Affairs and NHA Advisors initially on a not-to-exceed contract of $20,000 each, and then readjust and see what the product is. If it's not what we want or it's not helping us, end it there. If it is what we want and it is helping us, extend those contracts out into the future. But initially, we'll be limited to $20,000 each. I've talked with both Lighthouse Public Affairs and NHA Advisors at length. I located them through references from CSDA and for NHA Advisors, and I also Lighthouse Public Affairs. They represented or worked for the district several years ago and did a remarkable job for the district in getting state laws passed that the district was interested in getting passed at that time. So they are very effective. They come highly recommended throughout the state, and they know the district already. And they're familiar with the parties in the district, except for maybe new members like myself. But both of them, I think, will, based on my talking with them, seeing their work products and their reputations, I looked for them I look at these two specific agencies to recommend to the board for those contracts. It is outside the policy, and the policy requires me to tell you that I'm supposed to go out for bid for these. But due to the extensive consulting or work in designing what they can do for us, I'm recommending, that's one reason I'm recommending the $20,000 cap. And the other reason is because of all the extensive work that I've already done with them and coordinating with them to hit the ground running. And Lighthouse specifically, their history with the district. And their contracts are attached.
I think this is a good idea, Jim. I think if we're going to hit the $100 million that we need, I think that's what you've been talking about.
50.
It's 98 if we include the replacement of Oyster Point and the docks.
Why don't we just drop Oyster Point? That's another discussion.
Or expand, but
Well, yeah, I hear you, as long as it cash flows. It says in here, in the contract for Lighthouse, that there's a $20,000 cap, and then there's a $10,000 additional fee for identifying viable funding sources, which would take it up to 50,000. If we have the money, I think it's money well spent. I always love to see what our return on costs is,
right.
but we need this. We need the money, and frankly, yeah, this district went through some mediocre times for a lot of years, and then it hit the real trouble. I think we're on the road up to excellence. I know we're far above mediocre at this point. We have an exceptional board.
I think the board through performance and the district through performance have proven that we're responsible, professional, ethical with the money we earn and with the tax dollars that we spend. And it shows down in the pride of the work of the Harbor District. We're still short the funding needed for search and rescue, but we're working on that. We're still short some improvements that should be done, but not are required to be done. And we'll do those slowly as we go through when we can. And those projects aren't $100 million projects or even $1 million project. When we have the funding to do it, we'll jump on those. But the bigger projects, we have to increase the size of Johnson Pier and the safety out the end of the terminus. Even yesterday, they were, I don't know if they were selling it, but they were moving seawater in huge totes and containers, and semis were backing up down Johnson Pier. And even with the lack of
Seawater?
that's how they keep fish alive at the shipping boats or fish tanks. There's a market out there for, we do it a lot during crab season because the crab has to stay alive.
Yeah, all those restaurants with the little tank. Gotcha.
So, and and everywhere else that you need to keep the seafood alive. Those trucks were backing up and people just ignore them. Truck drivers they're very skilled in what they do, and the fishermen and the fish buyers are doing their job, and they've proven to be excellent at their job with no injuries that I know of recently. But the public treats it like a sidewalk and walks out in the front of the truck or in the back of the truck or in front of the forklift, or they don't get out of the way. It's just a safety concern, an issue that we need to get resolved. So we need to focus on, in my opinion, the highest priority is getting the center of the harbor, that being Johnson Pier, taken care of.
I'd love to see this as an agenda item to discuss various things. We could hire somebody from Costco who stands in front of the forklifts and waves. Maybe they'd like a part-time job. But, because this $58 million project for Johnson Pier isn't gonna happen quickly, and all of our efforts with PR and lobbyists and so on would go crashing down if we had a kid pushed off the pier or run over or something. So
Correct.
I think we should look at that as,
And I'm not a public affairs expert.
no, none of us are.
I can manage them, but again, I'm not that.
No, I think this is a great idea. If it needs board approval, you've got my support.
What I'm looking for, what I need from the committee, or the committee needs, is, do they want to forward this to the full board for consideration in August?
Or just go ahead with it.
It's within my authority, just go ahead with it.
I think we should give it to the full board.
Okay?
As a transparency. I'm just curious about that, the seawater, because there's been a change. There used to be the guy that would pull up by the public hoist, throw his hose in the water, pump seawater into his truck, and
Yes.
off he goes. Or is that just a different group?
That's a different group, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know, that's the first time I've seen those containers out there in those numbers being filled with seawater. I am following up on it to see who and what.
Can we send them down to the boat launch area? I mean, why do they have to go out on the pier with all the people and everything? There's a lot of
That's the most
ocean. around.
contaminated water in the harbor is over at the second most contaminated spot in the harbor is the launch ramp.
Oh,
Because of Deer Creek.
well, then let's. Right.
That's where the Deer Creek outfall is.
And how much do they pay us?
They do have, the truck has a cap, commercial activity permit. I'd have to look at if there's a user fee associated with it.
Not very much. I can find it.
Yeah, I'm
And
wondering
then,
if we shouldn't
I don't
increase.
know how they're charging it or what they're doing out at the end of the pier. I have to look into it.
In the instance of safety, I would think we could put a pump and a 6-inch
No,
pipe.
My idea for the future is the district installs a pump off the pier
Right,
and pipes it to a location in the harbor that anybody can go up and for a fee to hook up and take as much seawater as they want.
exactly.
Yeah, that's in the plan, but
So they don't have to go down Johnson Pier. I mean,
no,
that's.
we have to fix the
that's-
electrical. And they don't have to be in the inner harbor to take it. The outfall could be up on
The outer,
Pillar Point Boulevard.
yeah. I think that's a better plan and we should just charge them more.
Now, how does Lighthouse and whatever.
NHA?
NHA, how does that tie into California Consulting, where when we hire the one, we cut the other?
They'll work with California Consulting or help us work with California Consulting. But they are somewhat redundant. And
One has a track
we'll be
record.
coming back to the board in the near future with our recommendations on the contract for California Consulting.
Just, they've been not very productive with their contract. I'll just leave it at that.
Excuse me, C-Pure pays $500 per month ground rent for the term of the permit, plus electricity use fees according to the district's established rates. It's called C-Pure. They're from El Granada.
And that's a flat fee for the term of the agreement? No inflation adjust, no annual
Yeah, there's-
adjust?
So the payment of the annual permit fee was $281, and that goes up every year. They maintain a security deposit of $500.
And rates and fee go by up by CIP.
And then they pay us $500 per month. I'd have to go look back at they've been doing it for years. I don't know if it's gone up.
See that they're still current.
Right, and I think this is something we should look at, because if we have, what I have noticed is we have contracts that probably covered costs at the time they were written, but they don't anymore. And
Well,
so,
most of the contracts are tied to annual increases, but they're not, some of them are not market rate today. You're correct.
exactly, and I think the district needs to, in all of our future agreements, be looking at making sure we are getting fair and market rate.
We have over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
When
Gifts
the
of,
contracts come up.
gifts of public funds are, they're nice. You don't get a lot of negative comments from the people who are paying the gift of public, who are receiving the gifts of public funds. But,
Actually, that's who gave us some of our negative comments.
Well, that was, yeah, that's, the basis of negative comments was the market rate.
Yeah.
LAFCO and the grand jury.
so I think it's a new board and a new day.
Well, we're addressing that through, again, it's the negative comments with public affairs. We're correcting all those as the leases come up.
I heard a negative comment at the memorial I was at the other day, and the person who was saying you should cut all your fees, your dock fees in half, and I was going, that's interesting.
Dock fees are our major source of income,
Well,
are significant.
something I know this district is doing is looking at our shifting sources of income too,
Yes.
and accommodating it. So, I think this is good. I think it should come before the board. I think the board will be excited about it.
I'll do my best to get it broken down by quarter, not just year.
Any public comments? Any hands raised?
I've been watching them.
If there's nothing else, then I think we can adjourn.
So moved.
Done.
Done, settled, finished, as they say.
Woo-hoo.